Now that V's Layover EP has had its full tracking week, I'm honestly a little surprised the singles from this record didn't make more of an impact, considering BTS is a household name in most of Asia, especially Japan. I mean, Slow Dancing only charted in the West this week, and none of the previous tracks that were released returned in Japan. Now, Blue is the one singular track that just charted thanks to the full tracking week, and it is by far the worst on his Layover EP. Obviously, everyone knows that the term blue means signs of sadness or depression, as used in Eiffel 65's Blue Dabba Dee, and it's no different here, when this track is coming from the guy's perspective of how his partner is doing whatever he can to boost their morale, but regardless it isn't working out. Now, where I say the faults lie are really in the production, as I think V sells this track reasonably well, but the stripped back instrumentation and the stock percussion really hold this track back for at least making me care about it, considering this track basically sounds like a demo instead of a deep cut. Sometimes when I see certain charting entries that educate me a ton about the artist in particular, especially the OGs in the Japanese music industry, it makes me actually quite excited to talk about them. This artist in particular, Nakajima Miyuki, has been active in the music industry since 1975 and released her first major studio album in April of 1976. She would go on to release 43 more studio albums in her long and successful career, with her peak success being throughout the 1980s. In fact, back then she was so famous, there were tons of cover tracks made from her songs by Taiwanese and Chinese artists. I found this information through her Wikipedia page, so check that out in your spare time. Now, with this particular track, it's a soundtrack single for the movie listed that I'm not even going to remotely pronounce, as it must have done pretty well at the box office in order for this to chart. And considering that Nakajima Miyuki is 71 years old at the time of this recording, this single charting only makes it that much more impressive. Now, I know in context this might sound a little out of pocket, but Nakajima Miyuki sounding like she's super old in this track works for a ballad like this. Considering this ballad contains a slightly compressed instrumentation on the chorus, which gives her the opportunity to hear her vocals, it brings a unique charm to a song that otherwise would be a generic ballad with a very short but nice guitar solo at the end. One thing that confuzzled me about this track was the ending, because it almost seemed like we were getting to the start of the climax and then BAM! It was over. And as Colonel Sam Troutman would say,
"It's over, Johnny. It's over!"
After listening to this, I petitioned for more K and J-pop boy bands to make more synth-pop tracks with a funk guitar, as this is just a really fun track to listen to. It doesn't leave me with a whole lot to say, as this is utterly basic in every single other facet, but for this, I do not remotely even care, because as I said with Rise's Get a Guitar last week, I'm an absolute sucker for these types of tracks, and as long as the members of the band who actually give a damn, as well as the producers who produced this track, who seemingly did, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Great song, check this out.
Please just forget about, cancel out my name. Please never write to me, I love you just the same.
And here is the singular Western track that I've just been itching to review since the moment it just got released. Now, amidst all the same prototypical J-rock I must review every single week seemingly, it's such a refreshment seeing just an average and simple southern rock and roll track charting in Japan, especially since it didn't even chart in the West. That also raises the question, does the West even care about the Rolling Stones other than their magazines at this point? Because this should have been a much anticipated comeback single that will be on their latest album called Hackney Diamonds when it gets released this October. And you best believe I will be listening to that full thing. Now, as for the single itself, it's clear that Mick Jagger hasn't even lost a step and is still has a fantastic voice considering the geezer just turned 80. I should also include all the members because they all don't even remotely sing like they're nearing their 80s as well, but as a rock and roll song, it absolutely checks all the boxes. Great vocals, the production is very refined with punchy guitars, a solid guitar riff at the beginning, you name it. It exists in this track despite not being the best of the Rolling Stones discography. Great stuff, and it certainly leaves me excited for this next album that's coming out. It's been a while where I felt that an anime theme song was made to be a proper song in an extended version, rather than the first minute and a half being good, and then it just completely falls apart right after where the anime opening ends. Now, I don't think I've felt this way since Yonezu Kenshi's Kickback for Chainsaw Man, so it's been close to about a year. Sorry, Almi, I like Kickback, likely to your dismay. This actually is a great sleeper anime theme song that probably casuals won't even recognize until they actually give this a proper listen. It almost feels very genre bending, mixing in a lot of influences from J-rock as well as punk, hard rock, and pop punk as well. As the guitars boom throughout the entirety of it with some solid vocals coming from Matsumoto Kenta, it also makes you want to listen to more of WANIMA when I could have the free time. So this is great stuff. After specials, I was just not ready for another kinggnu release to be so soon, as I feel like their grand return was a massive dud, and it made me kind of sick of the overexposure to anything Tsuneta Daiki related, and this includes his work with Millennium Parade earlier this year. So when I remembered back in July that this single was for a new movie called Don't Call It Mystery that's being released in September thanks to an article I found off of the Anime News Network, I was not remotely even looking forward to this. I just need a break from Tsuneta Daiki, and sadly, I'm not getting my wish granted. Thankfully, this track is more refined than specials. However, there are some odd production choices that Tsuneta Daiki seemingly made through a random generator and thought, you know what? This is unique enough. So in return, you get out-of-place DJ scratches and early 2000s hip-hop 808s in an otherwise orchestral track that bleeds into the first verse. But this one production choice that really puzzled me as well was the talkbox vocals in the production. It worked nicely as backing vocals, it did not work in the bridge, and it made it very anticlimactic. And this is where I have my opinions on Tsuneta Daiki as a producer. Recently, he's either been very generic or just all over the place structurally, and it's leaving all of his releases vastly underwhelming, including this track where it somehow sounds both professional and amateurish at the same time. It just makes this track acceptable at best. Let's move on. As of lately, Higedan seemingly have returned to their older sound since releasing their smash hit subtitle, and hey, I'm not complaining. This sound is what made me like Higedan initially up until they were making singles for their album Editorial 2 years ago. Now with Chessboard released a few weeks ago, Higedan went for a more grandiose sound that was executed super well. Believe it or not, Chessboard is actually pretty similar to My Chemical Romance's Welcome to the Black Parade, if there wasn't a single shred of punk and emo rock in it. Now Nichijo is vastly different, and it's more of a chill pop song about the protagonist being an emotional roller coaster. However, they're mainly sad, but their partner is what's getting them through life, as said protagonist is grateful for their existence. But the production makes it work quite well. The reverb on the guitars actually give this quite the hollow but melodic sound that engages me, and the rest is your standard Higedan sound, so this works too. This has been another good week. This is easily the most confusing track of all the new debuts, so listen here because, well, this puzzled me as well. So this was already on streaming platforms a year and a half ago, but was released physically last week. Seems like an odd release strategy, but hey, I guess it worked out for this group in the end. Now, thankfully, to some degree, this track isn't your standard idol track as far as the production goes, as it's very video gamey type of sound, but after that, at least the lyrics only have that ooh core really melted into it. Otherwise, it's just generic after that. I don't have to add much to this at all. If you think of Kaze Fuji's Kirari with better mixed production, you get Makeup Day by Naniwadanshi. It's that plain and simple. Once again, it's another good synth pop track.
Mystery. We gotta match it. We gotta match it. Mystery. We gotta match it.
This is by far BE:FIRST's most minimalistic track in their entire discography. The production literally consists of beeps and boops in the synths that sound like a child's toy, and then the chorus barely ramps up the production ever so slightly, adding in some deep bass and some trap skitters across the chorus. Here's my dilemma with this. When you make a song talking about, look at us, we're zooming around Tokyo, look at all the interviews, magazines, and public appearances we now do. Our lifestyles are art. We gotta smile so people don't hate us but stay humble not to stand out. By the way, this set of lyrics was utterly stupid because this track is the pure definition of a walking contradiction. as you're clearly flexing on literally everyone. This isn't even that far removed from your standard Western rap song talking about I get all the bitches, I'm stealing your girl, and I'm so fucking famous and rich. We're just not your prototypical idol group anymore. We're mainstream. The lyrics here are so amateurish that it feels like a 16-year-old TikTok star made them after he got his first $1,000. This track lacks a serious groove and tightness that it desperately needed in order to be at least tolerable. This track blows, and it low-key kind of pissed me off, I'm not gonna lie. And that concludes our week. Overall, it was just all over the place by the quality of the tracks, with the best going to Natsuake by WANIMA, with a tie at honorable mention, those being Dreamland by ENJIN, and Angry by the Rolling Stones. Trust me when I say this, the highs of this week were really high. The worst, thankfully, is really easy to choose from, and that's easily going to Mainstream by BE:FIRST for being an insufferable, braggadocious piece of garbage. I'm just blown away with how Japan is seemingly really behind this. With the dishonorable mention going to Blue by V, as it's just a whatever single from an otherwise decent EP. However, Glass Window by kinggnu was really close to tying. Thank you all so much for watching. I have a new short idea that I have in the woodworks to up the retention rate, and it will not be my typical song review idea, but it's something that I'm really eagerly excited to work on. So subscribe and hit that bell so that you know when it comes out. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I'm Drew from Drew Reviews Music, and I'm signing off saying see you next week. Peace out, everybody.